Yeah, Millie, you want to come out here? I need to position the camera, and then I'll duck out. Whenever we switch or something. The intro to the stage is here, or the entrance to the stage is here. So yeah, I'm going to go stagehand. That's stagehanding it. That's what I'll do. Good evening, everyone. My name is Joan Wright, and I'm a member of Workers Strike Back, and a tech worker and a member of OPIU 153. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here this evening, both everyone that's here in person, but also everyone joining us on the live stream. This event is jointly hosted by Workers Strike Back, the Jill Stein campaign, and Abandon Harris, a nationwide organization of Arab and Muslim Americans calling for a vote against Harris on the basis of her support for the genocide in Gaza. Workers Strike Back is a nationwide organization fighting for these main demands: that workers need a real wage, a 25-hour minimum wage, good union jobs for everyone, to fight racism, sexism, and oppression, quality, affordable housing and free healthcare, ending the genocidal war on Gaza, and that means no military aid and no occupation, and absolutely, that's right, and absolutely, lastly, no more sellouts. We need a new party to fight for working class and oppressed people. We have a great panel of speakers tonight. The first one is going to be Millie Kennedy, who's going to give us our land acknowledgement tonight. Millie is an Indigenous leader here in the Seattle and greater community who helped fight and win the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution alongside our Socialist City Council member office with Kshama Sawant. Millie Kennedy, please come up.
Greetings, everyone. My name is Millie Kennedy. I am Tsimshian. I am Ganhara from the Raven clan. My people come from First Nations, British Columbia. We migrated to Southeast Alaska 6 hours away before there were borders. And so I am Indigenous. I've been asked to do a land acknowledgement, but I made it explicitly clear at Jill's first fundraiser that I don't do land acknowledgements. However, I am doing a solidarity statement with Palestine. And I'm doing this for my good friends, Kshama Sawant, who's done so much work for our Indigenous community. My new friend, Dr. Jill Stein. And my bestie back there, Georgia Davenport. And I just want to acknowledge I have my husband here who's also Indigenous. He's both Athabascan and Tlingit. Endelawan, Zimgigit Endelawan. Greetings, people. Greetings, people. I'm here to let you know what my thoughts are on what's going on in Palestine. and how much I've learned throughout the year that I didn't know. This is now around or about day 371 of the ongoing brutal genocide against indigenous Palestinians in Gaza and now the West Bank. We must remember and acknowledge that here in Seattle, we are on stolen Coast Salish land, specifically the ancestral land of the Duwamish people, who now exist among the Suquamish, the Tulalip, and the Muckleshoot Indian nations. There's also a group of Duwamish still in Seattle that are non-federally recognized. We must also recognize the stewardship of Seattle's Coast Salish people since time immemorial, as well as this disruption of the work and stewardship by colonization and genocide that has occurred and continues to occur since 1493. The current genocide in Gaza and the genocide that occurred against Native Americans are not disconnected. The United States empire that we live under, which was founded on the mass graves of Native Americans, has existed through racist and dehumanization, colonial violence, and genocide against Native Americans, is the same US empire that funds, supports, protects, and empowers racist and dehumanization, colonial violence, and genocide against Native Palestinians in Gaza. Shame. This is why the parallels between Palestinians and the indigenous Native Americans runs deep and is unshakable. These two genocides are not only connected, they are the same. The perpetrators of genocide against these two peoples are the same and have been done for the same means and for the same reasons: to exterminate and ethnically cleanse indigenous people for the sole purpose of extracting their lands and their resources. In order to not make land acknowledgement simply performative exercises, we must remember that the United States and all of America, known to us as Turtle Island, is still in denial that colonization and genocide has occurred and continues to occur right here. Yet, as indigenous people from Turtle Island, we are still here. If our collective commitment to opposing colonial violence and genocide is sincere, then we must commit ourselves to ending and stopping genocide everywhere and against everyone, from Turtle Island to Palestine. This is why I support Jill Stein, a non-genocidal candidate for president. From sea to shining From sea to shining sea, Turtle Island will be free. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Free. Free, free Palestine. 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 Enjoy Kshama. Thank you.
I'm switching the mic.
Quick technical switch. Sorry, everyone.
Can we hear it one more time for Millie? Check, check. All right, great. I can talk into this. That's right. So what we're here for is endorsing and calling for a vote for Jill Stein. My union, OPIU 153, was one of the many unions that passed a ceasefire resolution calling for an immediate end to the genocidal war on Gaza earlier this year. And I was part of a rank and file effort to introduce and campaign for that ceasefire resolution, along with many of my coworkers, along with the organizing skills that I learned in Workers' Strike Back. Yet, not a single one of us, not a single one of my coworkers was consulted when our union leadership decided shortly thereafter to endorse Kamala Harris, despite her unequivocal commitment to continue funding and politically backing the genocide. And now also the broader war in the Middle East. Endorsing Harris, despite her active role as the vice president facilitating this genocide, completely undermines the leverage of the anti-war movement and essentially erases all of the efforts of myself and my coworkers to use our collective power to put pressure on the Biden-Harris administration to end their support for the war. It undermines our ability to put pressure on them on urgent issues that we face as workers, like raising the minimum wage, establishing single-payer healthcare, so that we don't have to bargain for it in our contracts. And if we're lucky enough to have a union in the first place, protecting immigrant workers and taking action on climate change. We have no way to stop the Democrats from participating in genocide or from moving farther and farther to the right on countless domestic issues, which they are currently doing at an alarming speed. And if we endorse and vote for them, regardless of their positions, just because Trump would be even worse on some of these issues. There needs to be real consequences for the Democrats at the ballot box for supporting genocide. That's why the same organizations hosting this rally held one just like it in Dearborn, Michigan last week, a swing state with the highest percentage of Arab and Muslim voters who overwhelmingly prefer Jill Stein to either Harris or Trump. That's right. Over 200 people showed up to that rally in person, and thousands more joined on our live stream. And as a result of the success of our rally for Jill Stein in Michigan, the Democratic Party launched a wave of attacks against Jill Stein, the Green Party, Abandon Harris, and Workers' Strike Back. Kshama Sawant's speech from that rally went viral among the Democratic Party supporters. That's right, we'll be proud of that. I'm sure some of you tonight have probably seen it, right? They try to intimidate us into silence by accusing us of being closeted Trump supporters. No, we are not Trump supporters. Trump is trying to outdo Harris on backing Israel no matter what, but we are not going to back down in the face of that intimidation. Genocide is a red line we will not cross. The anti-war and workers' movement need to pose an actual threat to the two warmongering parties of big business in order to have an impact. That's why Workers' Strike Back is helping to build the largest possible vote for independent, anti-war, pro-worker candidate Jill Stein, especially in Michigan, where we have the best opportunity of defeating her with a clear anti-war vote for Jill Stein. And it is also why we are organizing a conference in February to discuss next steps after the election towards the creation of a new party for the anti-war and workers' movement. We're going to be hearing for some very important, incredible speakers here this evening. But first, I'd like also to hand it off to my co-host, Margaret Elizabeth, who is the chair of the Green Party of Washington. Please welcome Margaret.
Thank you, Joan. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here tonight. As Joan mentioned, my name is Margaret Elizabeth. I am the chair of the Green Party of Washington and co-chair of the National Lavender Green Caucus, and I'm excited to be here with you all tonight because I'm sure we're all here for the same reasons. I want to share a few things with you today before we begin with the rest of our speakers tonight. We're all here because we have common perspectives on things like electoral reform, police reform, social justice, the ecological crisis, and perhaps most urgently, an end to the genocide and peace for Palestine. Countries of the imperial core are overwhelmingly responsible, specifically the ruling classes who control the means of production and energy, for excess emissions which are driving the climate crisis. The ecological crisis represents the process of colonialization and appropriation, which is also a disaster which is playing out along colonial lines. If we're not attentive to these colonial dimensions, we are going to fundamentally miss the point. We live in an age of incredible paradox, with tremendous production, labor, and manufacturing, yet 80% of the world's population cannot meet their basic needs. The explanation for this paradox and the problems of social and ecological change which we face are ultimately a symptom of our system of production, capitalism, where our productive capacities are overwhelmingly organized around what is most profitable to capital and what can facilitate accumulation in the imperial core. We need to be cognizant of the fact that liberation in Palestine is fundamentally antithetical to the capitalist world economy. Any liberation struggle by a country on the periphery of the imperial core to achieve economic independence, to use their own resources for their own development, for their own ecological transition, or for their own human needs is destabilizing for capital in the core. And capital reacts with the most extraordinarily violent backlashes, and we've seen it happening all of the time. Now it's Palestine. Before it was Libya, before it was Iraq, before it was Chile, before it was Indonesia, before it was Congo, and it will never stop. The situation in Palestine right now, which I think we need to fundamentally understand for the capitalists, is not primarily a moral one. That's how we think of it, but that's not how they think of it. For them, this is a matter of suppressing and crushing liberation movements. A liberated Palestine means a liberated Middle East. Liberation in the Middle East means capitalism in the imperial core faces a crisis, and they will not let that happen. They are unleashing the full violence of their extraordinary power to make sure it doesn't. This is a crisis which, at its root, is about capitalism and can only be overcome by recognizing that fact. And the antidote to capitalism is ecological socialism. We should have collective democratic control over what we are producing, what our goals of production are, and who it benefits, and so on. When we can do that, we can solve these problems that we're facing very quickly. We actually know what to do, we just don't have the power to do it. So I think in the face of these ongoing crises, we have to have clarity about what it is that we wish to achieve. We need to start building movements which are capable of achieving them, which is why I'm happy to be here tonight with the Workers' Strike Back and the Abandon Harris movements. Together, collectively, with all of you, we can change this world for the better.
Thank you, Margaret. Our first speaker tonight is going to be Andre Johnston, member of Workers' Strike Back and one of the Boeing machinists, currently on strike for a 40% raise and full retroactive instatement of the pension stolen from them a decade ago. He is a rank and file member of IAM 751, speaking with us today in a personal capacity. Please welcome Andre.
Good evening, everybody. Thanks for coming and supporting this very important rally for Jill Stein. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge my wife and daughter for supporting me. Um, If there's one thing this past year has made clear, it's that opposing foreign abuses of US capitalism is one of the most important tasks American working people can undertake if we care about truth, justice, and human rights. There are other important fronts upon which the struggle takes place, but opposing US and Western warmongering, militarism, and empire building is intricately linked with and is extremely consequential for the need to build a militant working class movement in our own country, for our own fight against the billionaires, for decent lives for ourselves and our children. Excuse me. For our struggles year against, did I turn it off? Okay. For our struggles here against racism and misogyny, and for LGBTQ rights. We cannot hope to stand up to these things in the United States whilst also supporting the genocidal and warmongering parties in our own elections. Western warmongering, led by US capitalist interests, is responsible for the most death, destruction, displacement, and human suffering out of any of the abusive policies our governments inflict upon people. As abusive as domestic issues can be, nobody here at home has had to worry so far about bombs being dropped on their homes. But this genocide is now escalating into an all-out war, and the warmongers will rob American workers to pay the price of that war, both in dollars and in lives lost. Just this week, the Biden-Harris administration announced they're sending 100 US troops to support Israel. Shame. To support the settler colonial Israeli state, the first troop deployment since the genocide began. Foreign abuses get less attention than domestic issues because they are inflicted upon strangers in other countries instead of upon our friends and neighbors, and because the imperial and corporate media work tirelessly to convince us that those foreign abuses are good and necessary. And the most insidious and sinister mythology is that this bloodbath in Palestine and Lebanon is somehow making the lives of ordinary Americans better. But they're actually making the lives of working people in marginalized communities in the US worse. The liberal leaders, politicians like AOC, Angela Rye, and media commentators like Mehdi Hassan, who attempted to smear Jill Stein on the Breakfast, or Angela Rye, who attempted to smear Jill Stein on the Breakfast Club interview in the name of a black woman. All these people are part of the problem. In return for selling their souls, they get to make sure their lives are cozy and safe, and more often than not, with lots and lots of money. I'm a Boeing machinist. A month ago, we voted by a historic 96% for all 33,000 of us to go on strike. Thank you. We're fighting for a 40% raise plus our annual bonuses called the AMPP. We're fighting for an end to mandatory overtime. We're fighting for retroactive pensions for all. Pensions that were robbed of us in 2014 by the Boeing executives with the active and public help from the Democratic Party and our own union leadership at the time. Boeing corporations, indeed. Boeing corporations makes billions off our labor, but those billions don't go to the workers who build the planes or to keep raising safety standards. Between 2010 and 2019 alone, the company spent $68 billion on stock buybacks and dividends for executives and wealthy shareholders. Shame. At the same time, they were robbing workers blindly and lowering safety requirements to dangerously low levels, which have already cost over 350 lives to customers of Boeing. Boeing is also the third largest military contractor, meaning it makes billions from war, like the one escalating in the Middle East right now. Neither Boeing workers nor the people of Gaza benefit from that. I'm proud that our union has called for a ceasefire under mass pressure from the IAM membership and the border anti-war movement. But I'm angry and furious that our union leadership has failed to do what is necessary to actually achieve a ceasefire, which is to demand an immediate end to US funding for the Israeli war machine and to rescind our endorsement of Kamala Harris and Joe Biden, who has funded and supported this genocide. Furthermore, our union leadership has failed to do what is necessary to win the demands of our strike. First, they recommended that we vote yes on a rotten tentative agreement. Rank and file members rejected that recommendation and voted to strike. Now our union leadership is refusing to escalate the strike. They should be calling for mass rallies and mass solidarity from working class people to put maximum pressure on the company and also to put maximum pressure on the Democratic Party, who is mediating our negotiation and has enormous leverage over Boeing. Instead, our union leadership has organized small picket lines, a weak strike fund, and has failed to put forward a fighting strategy. Earlier today, the leadership held a rally at our union hall, which I attended. They didn't invite Kshama Sawant or Jill Stein to speak, who have been fiercely pro-worker and have publicly supported our strike demands and walked the picket line with us. But they did invite sellout Democratic Party Senator Maria Cantwell, House Member Pramila Jayapal, who voted to break the strike of railroad workers 2 years ago. And let's not forget Maria Cantwell also voted for George W. Bush's Iraq War in 2002. We need a new labor leadership, one that will break from the Democratic Party, one that understands that the job of union leadership is not to mediate between the bosses and the union members, but to organize the union members in militant strikes, protests, and independent organization for the working class. Such a fighting strategy for the labor movement doesn't stop at our union contracts. We need a labor movement that is firmly anti-war and leads in building international working class solidarity against war, genocide, oppression, and exploitation. The imperial spinmeisters wildly exaggerate the differences between the Democratic and Republican parties, while downplaying the empire's foreign abuses as normal and nothing to worry about, because the last thing they want is the rise of a robust anti-war movement in powerful Western countries, especially not one that is connected to the labor movement and can use the power of strikes. If you take a stand against the capitalist war machine, you are standing against the very most abusive and tyrannical injustices in our world. But you're also standing against powerful people who will attack us at every turn. Just look at how they respect the rights of free speech for Chairman Omali Yeshitula and the Uhuru Three, or what they did to journalist and publisher Julian Assange, or where whistleblower Edward Snowden was forced to flee, or the lives of all the journalists and medical personnel and social workers arrested, tortured, and murdered in Gaza. If you oppose the imperial war machine consistently and forcefully, a systematic machinery of attacks will be unleashed against you. Not because anything you or I are saying is wrong, but because we have been indoctrinated to believe the opposite of what we are saying about the nations and groups that are being targeted for the destruction by the Western Empire. It is a well-documented fact that the mass media administers propaganda to advance the information interests of the US empire. That's the current we are swimming against when we take our stand against Western warmongering. The current of the most sophisticated propaganda machine that has ever existed. As Sami Hamdi explained so eloquently, we're talking about the Biden-Harris administration who has given Israel every single weapon that it has demanded. We're talking about a Harris administration that vetoed every resolution calling for a ceasefire at the UN. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that lobbied its allies to vote against the resolution calling for the end of occupation to the Israelis. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that threatened to sanction international criminal court officials if they issue an arrest warrant, according to the Karim Khan, the prosecutor himself. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that, when faced with backlash from groups like Hezbollah and the Houthis after the genocide began, the actions from the genocide, Biden and Harris have essentially said, Let the genocide continue. We'll bomb the Houthis and we'll bomb Lebanon instead, and turn the genocide into an all-out war in the Middle East. Shame. We're talking about a Biden-Harris administration that is unwavering in its support of a genocidal state military, which has killed hundreds more infants under the age of 2 than the entire casualty list of October 7th. Shame. Problems don't get fixed until enough people see them and understand them, and choose to get organized and fight back. And there is nothing more urgent in need of real change than the end of this genocide. To everyone here and every working person watching, let me paraphrase the great American socialist Eugene Debs. You do not need this capitalist. He could not exist an instant without you. You would just begin to live without him. You do everything and he has everything. And some of you imagine that if it were not for him, you would have no work. As a matter of fact, he does not employ you at all. You employ him to take from you what you produce, and he faithfully sticks to his task. My apologies. If you can stand it, he can. And if you don't change this relation, I'm sure he won't. You make the bike, the automobile, the train, and the jet. He rides in them. If it were not for you, he would walk. If it were not for him, you would earn the wages, the pension, and the vacation time, which would allow you to also fly abroad every year to explore the world and broaden your understanding of foreign cultures, whereas they use those profits for bombs and war. Be careful whom we are told to hate, and be careful whom we are told to be subservient to. The late great chef Anthony Bourdain said the following after visiting Gaza and the West Bank. The world has visited many terrible things on the Palestinian people, none more shameful than robbing them of their basic humanity. We need to build an anti-war movement and a labor movement that will fight unapologetically for the humanity of the Palestinians and the humanity of all working people, instead of lying in bed with Kamala Harris and the genocidal Democratic Party. We need to build a new party that can stand against both parties of capitalism and war. To everyone here and everyone watching, please join Workers' Strike Back, one of the very few organizations standing up to the war machine. Get organized with us to build the anti-war vote for Jill Stein, to deny Kamala Harris and the Democrats a victory this election as a consequence for their funding and support of this horrific genocide. And let's begin to building a movement and an organization that can win. Solidarity, no justice, no peace.
Thank you so much, Andre, for that fantastic speech. In case anyone here is not aware, with the Workers' Strike Back, we publish a weekly broadcast. And just recently, one of our episodes was covering a rally that we held alongside Jill Stein, visiting the Boeing picket line, and Boeing workers speaking to this very issue of breaking free from the two big parties of big business and supporting pro-worker independent candidates. So definitely check that episode out with Andre and Jill Stein on the Boeing picket line if you haven't already. Also, Workers' Strike Back is also organizing in unions and workplaces to pass solidarity resolutions to stand with striking Boeing machinists. That would include a solidarity donation to the strike fund that these brave, heroic workers desperately need. And excitingly, just right before this rally went off, I just learned that my union, OPIU 153, is going to be making a donation by passing that model resolution to the Machinist Strike Fund. If you want to organize in your union, please reach out to a Workers' Strike Back member. Check out our website. We would love to stand in solidarity with these machinists with your union as well.
Thank you, everyone. Just one more production note real quick. If you look around behind you, you'll see tables from the Green Party and Worker Strike Back in the back of the room. So please stop by there if you have not already. There's places to sign up for things, and there is a silent auction if you would be interested in participating in that. You got to just write your name on the thing. I will not pay attention while you're doing that. I'm just going to continue. Yes, I will hold it. Yeah. So, as we're getting the technical situation sorted out here, I'd like to introduce our next speaker, Rizwan Samad, a longtime progressive and anti-war activist who is currently organizing with the Abandon Harris movement, a nationwide organization of Arab Muslim Americans who are calling for Harris to be defeated on the basis of her support for the horrific genocide in Gaza. Thank you very much.
Good evening. It's an honor that this is my third time I'm sharing the podium with this honorable woman, Dr. Jill Stein. Please give a big hand of applause for Dr. Jill Stein. I also want to give you guys some good news. I recently came back from Detroit. I'm a vice chair of Abandon Harris movement, and we are working very hard on all the swing states. My recent visit to Detroit, and I want to tell this crowd and Dr. Jill Stein, there are over 200,000 Muslim voters, and I believe over 90% of the voters are voting against the Kamala Harris. And thanks to Dr. Jill Stein. You know, we have always been told to vote for lesser evil. But I'm confused. Who is the lesser evil? Kamala Harris has no message. There's only one thing. Donald Trump is bad. You know, usually I try to avoid watching TV, but last night I turned on CNN accidentally, and they were showing a black man interview, and they're saying the Kamala Harris is bad for black people. So I want to remind all the African American people, there was a time when she was a DA at the San Francisco. And you know what? She put more blacks into prison than any other DA. She made young kids grow up without the father. She created more single mothers. Now, she is telling Muslims that Trump is bad. At the same time, she's giving billions and billions of dollars worth of aid to Israeli Zionist regime to kill innocent women and children. Just imagine, $150 million jet, $80,000 bomb dropping on a tent, burning children, women alive. And you are telling me that Trump will be bad? How? Kamala Harris, shame on you. Giving 2,000 pounds of bomb, dropping every single building, university, and hospital, and burying women and children alive, and telling us that Trump will be bad? Shame on you. Shame on you. You know, Kamala Harris, you are not better than President Trump. You may be more evil and heartless person. You know, I've been watching you for over 20 years, and I cannot remember one single moment that I can say to Kamala Harris, I'm proud of you. You know, she's talking to women, please elect the first woman president. I want a message for all the women in America. If you want to vote for women, there's a good woman. Her name is Dr. Jill Stein. She cares. She cares about ordinary people. She cares about Muslim, Arab, African, Asian, American Indian, all the people. You know, we have been told lies and lies and lies over and over again. Now, I just want to tell to those who are watching me or listening me, if you will vote for Kamala Harris, with the ink of blood of those innocent children, you will victimize us again. So, before you think about voting for Kamala Harris, if you're a mother, look towards your children. You know, this woman is responsible of killing thousands and thousands of innocent children. Your vote matters. It is your moral and religious obligation to vote against the evil. Please take revenge by voting against her. Vote against her for making thousands of women widows. Vote against her for making thousands of children orphaned. Vote against her for making thousands of people paralyzed. Vote against her for killing thousands of men blindfolded and hand-tied behind their back and shot in their head. You know, we are watching the genocide in our handheld cell phone. And if America is not going to wake up, then when? For God's sake, don't make a mistake. Vote your conscience. You cannot vote for any evil. You just cannot. You cannot be part of a crime. You know, I want to, I get so emotional. I can't stop thinking about the thousands of little children are dying every day. As a father and a grandfather, when I play with my two grandkids, 1-year-old and 2.5-year-old, I start thinking about those little children who became orphaned, and they have no families. So I promised myself, I'm going to speak out against injustice here or everywhere. If you see injustice, speak out. Without thinking of any race, religion, ethnicity, gender, or color of skin. I have seen it over and over. People shy away from speaking against their loved ones, against their own country, and even the people of their faith because of fear and love. Always take a side of the truth, because that will make you a better person and better human being. As Martin Luther King says, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. My appeal to you or anybody listening in the state of Washington, make this blue state green. Make this blue state green. Long live Palestine. Thank you.
No votes for genocide! 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 Next, I have the pleasure of introducing Kshama Sawant, Socialist and former Seattle City Council member, who led the fight to win the first $15 an hour minimum wage in a major city, which is why, that's right. That is why Seattle now has the highest in the nation minimum wage, also winning the Amazon tax and landmark renters' rights. In November of last year, she helped win the strongest resolution on the city council calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. She is a founding member of Workers Strike Back, and Kshama can tell you better than most people how viciously the Democratic Party opposes any significant progressive measure, even at the local level. Which is exactly why we know that it is going to be an enormous uphill battle to wage a strong get out the vote campaign in Michigan to send the strongest message to the Democrats that we will not vote for genocide. It is unfortunate that Kshama has been a rare elected representative who has used her office not to make backdoor deals with big business and the Democrats, but as a platform for building movements of working people. Please welcome Kshama Sawant.
Thank you, Joan. Good evening, everyone. who are here in person and those of you watching over live stream. Democrats have completely lost it over my recent speech in Dearborn, Michigan. I spoke there at a similar joint rally by Workers Strike Back, Abandon Harris, and the Jill Stein campaign. I said that our slogan must be no votes for genocide, that we need to turn out every possible vote for Jill Stein, and especially where they matter the most in swing states like Michigan. I made the same point that Abandon Harris co-founder Hassan Abdul Salam and many other Muslim and Arab American leaders have made. I said that it would be historic if the Muslim community, the anti-war movement, and working people defeated a sitting vice president over her role in a genocide. That it would send a powerful message and deal a serious blow to this bankrupt two-party system. I have to thank the Democratic Party on behalf of our movement because they unintentionally helped spread our message to over 4 million people after a Democratic Party hack shared a clip of my speech. Why did they do this? They're certainly not trying to help us on the Jill Stein campaign. We can be clear about that. And why did the Harris campaign just release an unprecedented ad directly attacking Jill Stein? Why is AOC doing a backflip on X, essentially admitting she lied, of course, while still running interference for Harris and US capitalism? Why do the Democrats seem to be totally losing their shit? The Democrats and the forces of US capitalism are afraid. And in fact, they are becoming more afraid as we speak. Recent polls now show Harris doing worse. The slim lead she had is shrinking. This race is still too close to call. We should not get complacent. But one thing is clear, the Harris honeymoon is over. Why? Because reality is setting in. The very obvious reality that Kamala Harris shares full responsibility for her part in the horrors in Gaza, that she is backing Israel to the hilt, that she shares full responsibility for the breaking of the railroad workers' strike, for breaking of promises on the $15 minimum wage and on public health care, that she is the preferred choice of Wall Street. Over 350,000 Palestinians are now dead, directly or indirectly, because of this genocide. It is one of the fastest moving genocides in history. Entire bloodlines are being wiped out. The Gaza Civil Registry has reported that 902 entire families have been killed. Kamala Harris deserves to lose 1,000 times over. She is no bystander. She is a sitting vice president and a leader in the Democratic Party. There is growing evidence that this is a full partnership in genocide, that the Democratic Party and, of course, US capitalism as a whole approve of it, that they share the goals of the Israeli state's ethnic cleansing project. The recent letter from Blinken and Austin, actually just today, with their supposed 30 days notice, is only their latest attempt to fool us. Remember Blinken's statement murmuring something about ceasefire during the DNC? It's like that. It's just an attempt to fool us. They have no intention of changing their policy on Israel, as they have made abundantly clear. They are merely scared about losing the election to Trump. Thank you. Does our clear opposition to Harris mean we want Trump? We have all heard this 1,000 times now, and this is 1,000 times untrue. As I said in Michigan, our slogan must be no votes for genocide, no votes for Harris, no votes for Trump. We need every possible vote for Jill Stein, because every vote for Jill Stein is a vote against the genocide. But there is, in fact, a danger of working people, including a section of the Muslim American community and including in Michigan, moving to support Trump because of Biden and Harris's unapologetic genocidal position and betrayals of working people. This is exactly why it is so crucial we use the less than 3 weeks before election night to campaign and get out the vote for Jill Stein. But we should be crystal clear. If Harris and the Democratic Party lose this election, they will have no one to blame but themselves. Even now, if Harris was to come out squarely against the genocide and call for an end to all military aid to Israel, if she were to come out again in support of Medicare for all instead of saying she opposes it, or the $15 minimum wage, she could do any of these things and likely win the election. But she is not going to do that. Why? Wall Street billionaires and the ruling class certainly strongly prefer Harris to Trump because she is much more pliable and controllable by them. They were euphoric when she was crowned the nominee. But just as in 2016 and 2020, when the Democrats carried out coups against Bernie Sanders, it is more important to the leadership of the Democratic Party and the powerful people in US capitalism to ruthlessly represent the interests of the capitalist class than it is to stop Trump. In other words, let's be clear, in other words, yes, the US capitalist class would prefer Harris and they would prefer to defeat Trump. However, if defeating Trump means they have to shake one hair from their position in favor of this genocide, in favor of their exploitation of US working people, then they would much rather lose the election to Trump. That is the only way we can explain their steadfast commitment to this grotesque slaughter taking place in Gaza and the expansion of the hostilities to Lebanon and beyond. In reality, the Democrats are the best builders of Trumpism. It was the betrayals by Clinton, Bill Clinton, his attacks on the welfare system and the poor, his attacks on workers with NAFTA, his building of the mass incarceration system. This is what led to the election of George W. Bush. It was the betrayals by Obama that led to the rise of the right-wing Tea Party movement. It was in particular because of Obama bailing out Wall Street instead of working people in the Great Recession. But also his abandonment of both single-payer healthcare and the so-called public option, along with his escalation of the war in Afghanistan. It was Obama's election in reality that was the final blow to the anti-war movement at the time. Our anti-war movement that was supported by sections of the Democratic Party when Bush was in power was told to shut the hell up when Obama was elected so as not to embarrass him. This supposedly anti-war Democrat carried out a troop surge in Afghanistan and the war went on for another decade. The Democrats are the graveyard of social movements. And now it is the Biden-Harris administration's betrayals and support for this genocide that have made it possible for Trump the most unpopular president in modern US history to even have a chance of returning to the White House. It is beyond ironic and shameful that the same Democratic Party, which once ruthlessly attacked independent left candidate Ralph Nader for allegedly helping to bring George W. Bush and Dick Cheney to power, is now celebrating Dick Cheney's recent endorsement of Kamala Harris as though it were the second coming. George W. Bush, whom they called a fascist and threat to the continuation of US democracy at the time, these same Democrats now lionize him. But it shouldn't be surprising really to us. This is also the same Democratic Party that at the time embraced George W. Bush's carpet bombing of Afghanistan and Iraq, just as they now embrace genocide in Gaza. It is now the Democratic Party whose candidate has proudly declared that the only thing she would do differently as president than Biden is to include a Republican in her cabinet. There has never been a lesser evil in reality, because both of these parties have always been warmongering anti-worker parties. The Democrats were the party of the slave owners. They were fully on board with the genocide of the indigenous people in the United States. Andrew Jackson was a Democrat. The Democrats were the party of Jim Crow. They were the party that launched the Vietnam War. Their party is covered in blood from head to toe. And not just historically, they're bathing in it right now. And the party will not change for the simple reason that this is not in any way a party of working people or the oppressed. It is a party of the capitalists, the party of US imperialism, the party that puts maximizing profits ahead of human life and even human civilization itself as they escalate the climate catastrophe and as Harris now comes out in support of fracking. The public expressions of concern and the hand-wringing by the Democratic Party are just theater. They have always been. We do not accept that the Democratic Party is left in any sense or that it represents working people. Who will actually fight against Trump if he is elected? I am going to make a prediction, and I don't think I'm going out on a limb. We will. In 2016, after Trump was elected the first time, working people, my city council office, and my fellow socialists organized protests here in Seattle when the Democrats were sitting shell-shocked, and we organized protests around the country the following day. Tens of thousands of people came to those protests. We, socialists, were the ones who, under the threat of Trump's Muslim ban, shut down an international airport, SeaTac airport, with mass civil disobedience. This was the only airport fully shut down in the US at that time. Also at SeaTac, the Democrats played no role other than Pramila Jayapal doing a photo op there and leaving. In fact, the Democrats were so unhappy about our movement's civil disobedience on that night that they told me so in repeated phone calls as we were protesting at the airport. But the Supreme Court was preparing to overturn Roe v. Wade, and the Democrats had rolled over on their backs. We, socialists and working people and union members, built protests, and our movement won the first abortion rights sanctuary in the country in Seattle. And later that year, we also, through the People's Budget Campaign, we also won full funding for all abortion needs for anyone who happens to be in the city of Seattle. What were the Democrats doing after Trump's election in 2016? Barack Obama said, give Trump a chance. The Democrats prioritized the stability of their capitalist system over any building of working class resistance to Trump. Their challenge was entirely, to the extent that it was entirely to the courts. Why? Because they are in fact more afraid of working class movements, more afraid of working people as a whole than they are of Trump. The far greater evil than Trump is this two-party system. These two capitalist parties that are on a fast track toward genocidal and global war, increasingly brutal attacks on working people, and a climate apocalypse. We have to end it. To do that, we have to end our support for the two-party system, and we have to fight actively in each election against the two-party system. It was a positive thing that a number of labor unions passed ceasefire resolutions since the onslaught against Gaza began. But then the leaders of these same unions, including Sean Fain of the UAW, shamefully endorsed Biden, the US president actively arming a genocide, and then they rapidly endorsed Kamala Harris after her overnight coronation. Even now, I call on Sean Fain to reverse his historic mistake, because history will judge Sean Fain. It will also judge Randy Weingarten, a longtime leader in the American Federation of Teachers, my union, the AFL-CIO National President Liz Schuller, and history will judge all other leaders of the labor movement who have given their full-throated support to this administration and the horrors being carried out. We are told we can't vote for Jill Stein because she can't win. I really disagree with the idea that someone should only run for office if they think they can win the actual office. When I first ran for office in 2012, that was for the state house, I had no expectation of winning, and we didn't. What we did do was set a clear example of socialist politics in action. And in winning 29% of the vote in the general election against Frank Chop, no less, we made a major political impact. We scared the Democrats, and we set the stage for our successful campaign the following year for city council, which we did win, and the victory. And the first major city $15 an hour minimum wage, which we did win. To be clear, I would love for Jill Stein's campaign to win the White House. I would love if instead of having the goal of defeating a vice president arming a genocide, if instead we could beat both Harris and Trump. If there was a state where we could carry out a get out the vote campaign and defeat them both, I would proudly spend every hour I have and give every dime I own to do that. But I just don't believe that that is where things are at. And I think it is very important to have an honest assessment of the balance of forces between the ruling class and the working class and of the objective situation. But that does not mean we stay at home in despondency. It means exactly the opposite. It means we go out there and fight for every single vote for Jill Stein in this election. It means a systematic get out the vote campaign and not one that's limited to the so-called safe states. Nor can we simply formally endorse Stein's anti-war pro-worker campaign and do absolutely nothing to build it, as my former organization, Socialist Alternative, is unfortunately doing. This is, in another name, an act of lesser evilism. And in this context that we are in, it is a betrayal, as is DSA's backdoor support for Harris, with most leaders in the organization adopting a so-called safe state strategy. Safe for what? Safe for arming a genocide? Safe for strike breaking? No, we need an unsafe state strategy. And we need to build a new party for working people, an anti-war party that makes this country unsafe for the warmongering billionaire class. In particular, that means campaigning first and foremost in Michigan, which Workers Strike Back is doing, for which we need your financial support in a big way. We are sending some of the most experienced campaigning activists from Seattle, from Kansas City, from Minnesota, from Boston, all who are going to sacrifice their lives for 3 weeks, set aside their jobs, their families, set aside everything and stay in Michigan and get out the vote. But they cannot do that without your support, because we need to fund their flights, their accommodation, their sustenance. Michigan, with its biggest concentration of Arab American voters in the country, is and has to be the focal point of our leverage, and we have to use it for all that we can. And we can't afford to get complacent. I was in Dearborn for many days last week, and I met people, and others who were with me met other people who are excited about the Jill Stein campaign once they hear of it, but they hadn't heard about it till we talked to them, which means our task is cut out for us. It is a doable task, but it is a hard task, and we need everyone's support. And if you can't go on the ground in Michigan, which I imagine most people here won't be able to, then you have to support our effort by donating to Workers Strike Back. While fighting to win every vote against genocide in this election, we also need to prepare ourselves for November 5th. What should we expect? I don't think we can expect the White House. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying this on behalf of the Stein campaign or the Green Party. I'm a member of Workers Strike Back. They have a different view on this campaign. There are always debates within the movement. We need frank and respectful debates and discussion inside our movements. I think it is important to be straight with the working class. I think if on November 5th, our campaign gets over 1 million votes, that is a big victory and should not be the cause for demoralization. There is far more at stake than just one election. Because if the Democrats win on the basis of vowing to continue the genocide, while knowing that they are risking defeat, what won't they do? We are told we have to vote for the genocide because of fascism. Is there a danger of actual fascism coming to the United States? Yes, there is a danger, but not on November 5th, not because Trump wouldn't like to be a dictator, because he would like to be a dictator, but because he wouldn't be able to, because the objective conditions for that don't yet exist. The real danger of fascism lies in continuing to support this two-party system. In these two parties, both relentlessly driving the agenda to the right in the absence of a serious challenge from the left or the labor movement. As some have said in response to the latest horror show from Gaza, the entire US system needs to be dismantled if burning children alive in a hospital and a mother and son in a refugee tent is the lesser evil. The working class of America needs to rise up against both of these parties, and we need to break these two warmongering capitalist parties once and for all, and we need to break with capitalism itself. That is why I and many in Workers' Strike Back are socialists and agree with what Margaret said about how war will continue on the basis of capitalism. If it's not this war, it'll be another war. If it's not this genocide, it will be another genocide. But this break from capitalism is not going to happen overnight, but it needs to start now. It needs to start with systematically fighting for no vote for genocide, for every possible vote for Jill Stein, and clarifying to people that the Democrats have crossed more than one red line. Obviously, the genocide is the most abominable red line so far, but it should also be a red line for a president to break a strike, as the Biden-Harris administration did with the railroad workers. No strike-breaking candidate deserves working-class votes. We need a new mass party for the working class, a new anti-war party. And the Green Party, Workers' Strike Back, Abandon Harris, the Revolutionary Blackout Network, all of us need to be part of this new party. As a step towards that new party, let's focus on getting out the vote for Jill Stein through November 5th. Then we can come together and take stock of where we are and get back to building a stronger movement against the billionaire class. As Joan said, Workers' Strike Back is organizing a conference on February 23rd to take forward the momentum from this campaign and build the fight against whichever warmonger is in the White House. No Harris, no Trump, no votes for genocide.
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 Solidarity.
Thank you so much, Kshama. Our last speaker before Jill Stein, I have the pleasure to introduce Josie Ebelhair to the stage. Josie is a member of Workers' Strike Back and a social worker for Washington State, unionized with WFC 889. She and her coworkers have been fighting the state Democrats' insulting offers of 1% and 2% raises, while the Democrats themselves accept a 14% raise. Josie is going to talk about the importance of finances. Just as Kshama was talking about, we need to build the strongest Get Out the Vote campaign across the country, but also especially in Michigan. And the importance of finances to this movement is why we need everyone here to make a donation of whatever amount they can afford to ensure our ability to get out the vote for Jill Stein over the coming weeks. Please welcome Josie.
When we fight,
We win.
when we fight,
We win.
when we fight.
We win.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. My name is Josie Ebelhair, and I'm a member of Workers' Strike Back, and as Joan said, a member of WFC Local 889. We're all here today to stand together against this horrific genocide in Gaza, to fight back against the two parties of warmongering billionaires, and to tell Kamala Harris and Donald Trump that we will not vote for genocide. It is clear that neither Harris nor Trump will end this horror. We cannot support any candidate or party backing a genocide. We will not simply fall in line and vote blue no matter who. We must draw a line, and building the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein is the best way to get the Democrats' attention to end their support for the war. We've all heard that a vote for Harris is a vote for Trump, but this is not true. It is Harris and Biden's unwillingness to listen to voters about the genocide in Gaza or the cost of living crisis here in the US that is causing them to lose our votes. The Democrats have invested more time, energy, and resources into setting themselves up as the alternative to Trump than they ever will in fighting for working people. This is why we are fighting alongside Abandon Harris to win the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein, the strongest anti-war and pro-worker candidate. Woo. Building our movement and winning this critical vote against genocide, maintaining our movement through November and beyond takes time. It takes resources, and yes, it takes money. So today I'm going to be asking you for a donation. Right now, we're passing around donation slips. You probably see folks milling about. I want to ask you to not fill those out yet. So just like hold them, pause on that. It takes serious resources to build a Get Out the Vote campaign. And so we are setting a very bold financial target today to raise $10,000 to continue to build this movement across the country. Yeah. If you're here in person, I'll ask you to raise your hand when I get a number that you can give. Fill out your donation card, but keep it in your hand until a volunteer from our donation teams comes over to process your donation and to collect it from you. If you're watching on the live stream, there's a donation link in the chat. Live streamers, you should say in the chat when you hear a number that you can donate to so we can all feel this momentum together. Now I want everyone to think about a number that you can give. Think about what's at stake with crisis after crisis hammering working people right now in Gaza, in the West Bank, in Lebanon, and here in Seattle. Think about a number that you can give, and then think if you can give a little more to Workers Strike Back, to continue the fight to end this genocidal war, to build the anti-war movement, to build the labor movement, to build a new mass political party that represents us and the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein this November. If you would like to donate directly to the Jill Stein campaign, you should go to jillstein2024.com. If you're using cash or check, please find the Jill Stein table in the back and they will give you an envelope. So today we've been talking a lot about what working people can do to end the genocidal war. Both parties of big business have shown their determination to back the Israeli state by the hilt. The Biden-Harris administration recently approved a record-setting $23 billion on top of the billions that have already been sent to fund the Israeli military. Despite the fact that over 60% of Americans want an immediate ceasefire and an end to U.S. military aid to Israel, they're continuing to support this war. Thousands have marched, protests, and joined encampments against the U.S. support for the genocide, and we must continue with the strongest fight to end this war. So today I will ask who can give $1,000 to continue to build the anti-war movement. Anyone here? Here in the front? Yeah. We got one in the back? Yeah. All right. We've also heard today about the important role of the labor movement from Andre, who spoke about the fight at Boeing. The labor movement has to fight to end this war, and we launched Workers Strike Back to be a home for people who want to fight for the militant union movement that we need, one that is willing to use its full power to fight for the interests of working people here in the US and internationally, because our interests are actually aligned with each other and not with the bosses of any nation. We've been helping Workers Strike Back members to pass resolutions in their unions calling for a ceasefire, including my own, as well as resolutions to rescind endorsements of Harris, so members can stop pouring dues into undemocratically Democrat campaigns. So who here today can give $500 or more to help build a fighting labor movement? Woo, we got a hand over there. We just heard from former Socialist City Council member Kshama Sawant, who for the past 10 years fought tirelessly for working people in her elected position. During the time she was in office, Seattle's working people won victory after victory. The first $15 minimum wage in a major US city, renters' rights, including eviction protection and 6-month notice for rent increases, and a tax on Amazon and big business to be used to fund affordable housing. Collectively, these victories represent a massive transfer of wealth from the bosses to workers and renters struggling to make ends meet. We founded Workers Strike Back to spread across the country the fighting class struggle approach that has succeeded in winning so many victories for working people in Seattle. We need to continue to build in every city where working people are ready to fight. Who here can give $200 or more to help spread those lessons to working and young people across the country? Yeah, a lot of hands. Woo! And of course, Jill Stein herself is here today. And every vote cast for Jill Stein is a vote that puts pressure on the political establishment in the US to end the war. Every vote for Harris or Trump undermines that pressure. Workers Strike Back and abandoned Harris members will be campaigning between now and November, setting up tables on street corners, knocking on doors, phone banking, and organizing rallies to win every possible vote for Jill Stein. We've heard today about the importance of the fight in Michigan in putting forward a bold and unapologetic campaign. Workers Strike Back members from across the country went to Michigan earlier in October to campaign for Stein and to build for our very successful rally in Dearborn. It is critical that we do not lose this momentum as we get closer to the election. We plan to continue to have Workers Strike Back members in Michigan until November 5th. And like Kshama said, these members will come from Seattle, Kansas City, Boston, Minnesota, and other areas. And these people have many years of campaigning and canvassing experience among them. They will literally be setting their jobs and lives aside for 3 weeks to go out and get the vote out in Michigan. These Workers Strike Back members are making a tremendous sacrifice, and we need financial support for their flights, accommodation, and their sustenance. This is the most immediate concrete task that we need to fund to defeat Harris in Michigan. Who here can give $100 today so we continue fighting for the biggest possible vote for Jill Stein this November? All right, and before and people can keep their hands up for the last one. All right, and before I run through these last few numbers, I'm gonna ask you to consider making your donation to Workers Strike Back monthly. This makes you a member of Workers Strike Back. You support the work that of our organization, and you're able to fully participate in our democratic process, like the vote we took in a national Zoom conference in July to endorse Jill Stein. Workers Strike Back has collected over 10,000 individual donations from thousands of donors across 46 states and internationally. I know I made a lot of big asks for money today, but every dollar really is crucial for building this movement. Every dollar goes towards making our movement stronger and making the billionaire class waste their money losing. Building this will take thousands of people chipping in what we can. Who here today can give $50 to continue building our movement and fighting back against the billionaires? Some fans. Yeah. And keep your hands up. Keep your hands raised. All right. And everyone keep your hands up. All right. And finally, who can give any amount today to continue to build the strongest anti-war vote this November and help build a new party for working people? Yeah. Woo! Everyone keep your hands up. All right. Thank you to everyone who's donated today. Now, to make the call for a new party and building the strongest anti-war vote a reality, we have to be active in the fight. Workers Strike Back is an organization active in struggle and fighting for working people. Becoming a member means that you agree with our 6 core demands. Workers need a real raise, $25 an hour minimum wage, good union jobs for all, fight racism, sexism, and all oppression, quality affordable housing, and free healthcare for all, end the genocidal war on Gaza, no military aid, no occupation, and no more sellouts. We need a new party. So there are a lot of people in this room tonight who agree with these demands and are already members of Workers Strike Back. So if you are currently a member of Workers Strike Back, if you could please raise your hand. Nice. There's a lot of people. Woo. And now, if you would like to become a member of Workers Strike Back tonight, after hearing everything we stand for and everything that we're fighting for, please raise your hand. Yeah. Woo. Yeah, and keep those hands up. People will come around to help you make you a member, because making any monthly donation amount will make you a member today and part of a fighting organization. And thank you to everyone who has donated today. This incredible showing is exactly what it's going to take to build the movement to end the genocide. We have a few weeks left to go all out to bid the biggest possible anti-war vote for Jill Stein. That vote will punish the two warmongering parties and serve as a step towards building a new anti-war party. Thank you, everyone, and solidarity.
Thank you, Josie. That was a fantastic fundraising effort. I think we got a lot of funds from people, and I appreciate you all being here tonight and donating. Hopefully it's going to stay exactly where it should. So we're at the end of our program mostly for tonight, and it's my great honor and pleasure to introduce the final speaker of the night. She was the Green Party nominee for president in 2012, along with VP nominee Sherry Honkala. She was arrested for disorderly conduct outside the second presidential debate that year for asserting that as the nominee on enough ballots to win, she should be included on the debate stage. And of course, Jill was arrested for disorderly conduct for that. Jill is no stranger to being arrested. In 2016, she again won the Green Party nomination for president, along with VP candidate Jamu Baraka. In September of that year, she was protesting with the water protectors at Standing Rock and spray painted a piece of construction equipment. This too led her to be arrested for interfering. In 2024, she has once again won the Green Party nomination for president, along with VP candidate Butch Ware. This past April, after being invited to join a pro-Palestinian student protest at Washington University in St. Louis, Missouri, she was violently arrested and thrown in jail once again. Despite continued oppression, she has stood fearlessly in the face of danger time and time again, strong in her beliefs and moral convictions to elevate the voices of oppressed and working class people all across the country. She stands for things that we all support, that if everyone just gave a little bit of consideration, they would support as well. Things like ending the occupation in Gaza, ending military aid to Israel. She calls for a $25 hour minimum wage, Medicare for all, and rent control in the United States. Of course, we're green, so she, of course, demands the ending of fossil fuel extraction and the continued fracking, which is destroying our country. I hope you would all please join me in welcoming the next President of the United States, Jill Stein.
Thank you, Seattle. Woo. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Seattle. Thank you, Workers Strike Back. It feels like this really is the ground zero for the revolution whose time has come. So I say thank you, Seattle. Seattle, the home of the Fight for 15, the home of Indigenous Peoples Day celebration, which we celebrated yesterday in Seattle. You have set the bar for the nation. We should be celebrating Indigenous people, not a genociders day, but Indigenous Peoples Day. That's what we should be celebrating. And leave it to Seattle to really set the tone and raise the bar for the whole nation. I have to say, having crisscrossed the country several times now in these last couple of months. You can just really feel the energy here in Seattle, and that's a tribute to every one of you, and I thank you so much for leading the charge for all of us here in this country. So all of us and all of you really are the conscience of the nation in demanding an end to this genocide in Gaza being perpetrated in our name with our tax dollars. We do not consent. And you are the moral compass, the missing moral compass for this nation. Actually, not even for this nation, for our ruling elites, for our economic and political elites, because we, the people, have already gone on record as early as November, within weeks of the beginning of this genocide. The American people already vehemently opposed this genocide and wanted an immediate ceasefire and an immediate diplomatic solution. And then a few months later, the vast majority of the American people have gone on record that we want an immediate weapons embargo to the state of Israel, starting now. That is amazing. And it is a tribute to all of us that we are not letting them intimidate us or silence us or scare us into being quiet. We are standing up and we are standing proud. When people say to me, aren't you afraid of being smeared? Aren't you afraid of being attacked? Well, I would say, as Kshama knows well, we have all been attacked and smeared for many years now. This is not new to us. The gravest danger, in my mind, is in not speaking out, in not opposing the genocide, the normalization of the torture and murder of children on an industrial scale. That is the real danger, that we allow our civilization essentially to be dismantled, that we allow international law and human rights to be taken down. That is what we really have to fear, not speaking out. We absolutely must continue to speak out. And to urge everyone not to give their vote to genocide. Because if you vote for either of the genocide candidates, you are endorsing genocide, you are affirming it, and you are enabling it. There's no ducking that. There's no closing your eyes to it. This cannot go forward without your permission. So deny the genociders your permission. Do not sell your soul. Do not compromise your humanity. We are standing tall together to say no. And I want to give a big shout out to the Muslim American community and to Abandon Harris, formerly Abandon Biden, for their leadership and their courage and their willingness to stand up and take the heat from the very start to call this in the way that it has to be called. This is a moral outrage. We must not go there. And the Muslim American community, who has more at risk than anyone here in this election, no matter which way it goes, they are very much in the target hairs here. But they've also been on the front lines of this crisis of empire. Genocide and the slaughter of innocent civilians is not new. It's taking place in an unprecedented, horrific way, the first live streamed genocide. But this fact of millions of people, innocent people who have been murdered just in the course of the post 9/11 wars, which were carried out for what? This was to stop weapons of mass destruction. These are wars based on lies that simply make us less secure, not more secure, create failed states, mass refugee migrations, ongoing terrorist threats. These have been a disaster from the start. So what we must do is not only stand up to oppose genocide, we are standing up also to oppose ethnic cleansing, occupation, and empire in general. And it's Muslim Americans and Arab Americans who've been on the receiving end of this crisis for decades. So my hat's off to the Muslim American and Arab American communities for daring to stand up and speak out and lead the way. As others have said, the outrageousness, the absolute brutality of this genocide is completely off the charts. You know, not only the slaughter of some 200,000 innocent civilians and the systematic torture, really, of every resident of Gaza, even those who have not yet been murdered, thank goodness, and we are doing all we can to stop this murder. They are tortured on a daily basis, starved, deprived of water, their housing is destroyed, they are living on the street, even their tents are bombed and set afire. They have had their health care and their hospitals purposefully targeted, their universities. Recently, data has come out showing that, in fact, the Israeli occupation forces are targeting children and shooting children actually in the head. This is now established as practice of the Israeli occupation forces. This is just unthinkable. They, of course, continue to target healthcare facilities and hospitals, most recently setting a fire to one of the hospitals in central Gaza, where there was just unbelievably horrific footage showing disabled people confined to their beds being burned alive by the actions of Israel. And unfortunately, this has become the rule, not the exception. This is just, genocide on steroids. And now that genocide is focusing on northern Gaza, where there is a policy being implemented of basically leave or be murdered, leave or starve, leave or be considered a terrorist. And it's not stopping there. The genocidal practices have now expanded into the West Bank and, importantly, into Lebanon. Israel has been preparing for war on Lebanon, has been egging to expand this war for some time. Now it is here, and the slaughter is taking place in Lebanon. This could be stopped with a simple phone call, like Ronald Reagan did in 1982 when he called Menachem Begin and said, "Your war is over." The IDF had invaded Lebanon at that time as well, pursuing the PLO, which was the Hamas of its day, the so-called terrorist organization. They had pursued them into Lebanon and were slaughtering people by the thousands, a drop in the bucket, actually, compared to what's going on today. Yet that was enough for Ronald Reagan, not exactly your model peace president. That was enough for him to say, it's over. He picked up the telephone, and within 24 hours, Israel had brought its troops back, and the bombs and missile strikes had ended. That is what we need to do right now, and every vote for our campaign is a shot across the bow of the empire, telling them we want that end, that weapons embargo, and that end to genocide now. Israel has been provoking escalation practically since this began by its attacks on the Iranian embassy, for example, which is a war crime that took place months ago in Tehran, in Syria. I'm sorry, initially it was in Syria, by the illegal assassinations, including of the very moderate negotiator from Hamas, Israel simply wiped him out. The act of terror, turning pagers and walkie-talkies into personal explosive devices, basically, which injured thousands of people, including healthcare workers as well, not just Hamas. Absolute shame. By attacking aid convoys and so on. And now the US is actually encouraging the attack on Lebanon. I don't know if you saw that, but before Israel went into Lebanon, they sought the approval of the Biden-Harris administration, which gave them the thumbs up to expand the war into Lebanon. And as if that wasn't dangerous enough, this war now is on the verge of expanding into Iran, which is unbelievably dangerous. Iran is in a military alliance with Russia, which has already expressed its support for Iran should it be attacked. It is entirely conceivable that we are not only looking at an expanding regional war, we could actually be looking at the beginnings of World War III, and this could be happening very soon. So it's unbelievably reckless and dangerous that the US is not only giving the thumbs up, but we are now sending boots on the ground. You may have heard the US in its Pledge of Allegiance to Netanyahu and the State of Israel. We have this ongoing competition between Trump and Harris, which one can pledge greater allegiance to Israel. So the Biden-Harris administration has basically now sent very sophisticated missile defense into Israel, anticipating that there will be a big strike back from Iran. And one of the more shocking pieces of news I saw just the other day was a statement from, I believe, the Biden administration saying, no, actually this was from Israel, saying that they don't intend to attack the nuclear facilities on the first strike, but they are expecting a response from Iran, and then they will basically unleash all their weapons, striking full force against Iran, including their nuclear facilities. So this is just allowing all hell to break loose here. This is a complete nightmare that our warmongering president and vice president are rushing into. This is like before World War I in its complexity, because you bring in Russia, you may very well bring in China as well. And by the way, we have some 40,000 US servicemen and women who are already in the Middle East, who are very much sitting ducks should a wider conflict break out in the Middle East. Plus, we have 2 aircraft carrier groups of naval ships. So that means both an aircraft carrier and the destroyers. There are about 5 vessels that go with every aircraft carrier. 5,000 servicemen and women go with each aircraft carrier. We have one that's been positioned off the coast of Iran for a couple months, actually many months, and then a new one that just motored over there, like within the last 2 to 3 weeks, basically off the Mediterranean coast of Israel. So we have been preparing for a much bigger battle. This could change everything. If we become involved in a major regional war, this is a disaster. This is begging for the use of nuclear weapons. Israel has already threatened to use nuclear weapons, even on Gaza itself. And if Iran becomes involved and other countries join in, who would put this beyond Bibi Netanyahu to use a nuclear weapon? And if they do, well, we could very well see Russia responding in kind. Nuclear war is never over there. It's always global, because when you see that mushroom cloud going up from a nuclear detonation, that represents a conveyor belt that is moving debris into the upper atmosphere. And what that is called is nuclear winter, because the atmosphere gets dimmed, there's less sunlight coming in, and because it's above the weather, it doesn't rain or get blown down or snow down. It stays there for decades. So you can't come back from a nuclear exchange. A single nuclear armed submarine contains the equivalent of 5,000 Hiroshima bombs. 5,000. And it doesn't take very many of these, several dozen. That's about it. An exchange of even tactical nuclear weapons that's relatively small is enough to put us into nuclear winter. And how bad that nuclear winter, how many millions of people starve, depend on how many nukes are exchanged. But if you start bringing in the big powers, this is, excuse me, this is a very serious proposition. This is a major game changer, yet we are being led blindly into this by leaders who misleaders, war criminals, effectively, who do not recognize the dangers of nuclear war, who are extremely cavalier about it, who say things like, oh, don't worry about it because it's over there. They are just ignorant of the risks that are being taken. This is why, excuse me, this is why it is so critically important that we stand up now. We stand up now to say no to the war criminals and the warmongers who occupy the White House and who are contesting for the presidential election. Because we need to get the warmongers out of the business of running the country before they get us all killed. And, it's not only the risks of war, it's also the cost of war. And this is where our welfare here at home comes into play, because the endless war machine and the endless wars of empire go hand in hand with a war on working people here at home. When we are spending half of our congressional budget on the endless war machine, we do not have the dollars that we need for FEMA, for example, to assist the people whose homes and businesses and communities have been destroyed. FEMA is about $9 billion short of responding to the recent double hurricanes. Well, $9 billion is exactly what was just shipped over to Israel, $9 billion in weapons to allow Israel to expand its very dangerous war. But it's not just FEMA, of course. This is, the lack of health care and housing and education and the fact of student debt. Over 60% of Americans are now living paycheck to paycheck. Americans deserve a $25 minimum wage. We need to have that and have support for it now. Half of all people who rent their housing now are struggling to keep a roof over their heads, paying 30 to 50% of their monthly income just to try to pay their rent. That means our people are within 1 or 2 paychecks of being evicted. Evictions are at an all-time high. Homelessness is at an all-time high, even while the billionaires, have doubled their wealth. And we are squandering half of our congressional dollars on the endless war machine. This is outrageous. There are some 87 million Americans who do not have adequate health care, yet we could provide health care to everyone at half the cost of what we are now paying We could be providing health care to everyone. I'm sorry, not half. We would save 1/3 of the cost of health care after we have expanded it to cover everyone and cover everyone comprehensively, including your mental health, your dental health care, your eyeglasses, your hearing aids, your reproductive care, and importantly, chronic care. So if your parents or a disabled child needs to be cared for chronically, you can do that at home under Medicare for All. And still, we save $500 billion a year. This is a shame on our electeds that we do not have this already. We can make public higher education free. It was free in my day when we didn't have the wealth and prosperity that we do now. We should have free public higher education. We need to be bailing out the students and not such young people as well, the former students, now going all the way up to retirement, who are still locked into unpayable student debt. We need to bail out that student debt as well as medical debt. That is the best economic recovery plan that we could possibly imagine. We bailed out the crooks on Wall Street. We can bail out the victims of the Wall Street economy. And let me mention, the most important thing we can do to solve the immigration crisis is to stop causing it in the first place through regime change operations, through endless wars, through the climate crisis, which we could be doing a lot to fix, through the war on drugs. And on day one of our administration, we would legalize cannabis as a first step towards treating substance use as a public health issue, not as a criminal issue. So that is one of many ways that we can decompress the causes of the migration crisis. We can also cancel the sanctions, for example, on Venezuela and Cuba, and stop destroying these economies. We can put an end to economic colonialism, like in Haiti, where we overthrew the democratically elected government of Aristide twice. And after he was overthrown and removed from the country, in came the Hillary Clinton Secretary of State folks to reverse the minimum wage referendum, which had raised the wages in Haiti from 30 cents an hour to all of 60 cents an hour. Hillary Clinton could not tolerate that because she wanted to maximize the profits of the clothing manufacturers. So under her watch, that minimum wage law was reversed, pushed back down, and Haiti was forced, continually into the economic chaos that has been imposed on it for centuries, actually. So we will put an end to that kind of an interference, that kind of economic suppression, that kind of corporate rule that is the norm. That is the norm rather than the exception. So all of that together can vastly decompress the migration crisis. And then we need to take those dollars. They should not be going into a wall, which does no good whatsoever. That wall simply kills people, kills wildlife, destroys ecosystems. And drugs, by the way, are not coming across in the borderlands. The drugs are coming across through the legitimate portals of entry. They are not carried by immigrants. They are carried by plain old red-blooded Americans are bringing those drugs into the country. We need to stop criminalizing and disparaging immigrants, but recognizing immigrants as the peaceful, law-abiding security developing, economic developing people that they are, who make this country great, who bring diversity and richness to our culture. And shame on Kamala Harris for adopting the disparaging approach of the Republicans. So we can, instead of investing in the wall, we can put those dollars into the civil infrastructure so that background checks are done quickly and expeditiously, and then people get their papers, they come in, and then they go to work. Because migrants who work not only pay their way, they make our communities prosperous, stable, and secure. So that is how we will address the migration problem. The powers that be are quaking in their boots. They are terrified that Muslim Americans are standing up, that Arab Americans are standing up, that students are standing up, that all over our campuses, we are standing up. In our streets, we are standing up. We're standing up to end genocide. We're standing up and we are coming together, not only to end genocide, but the endless war machine, to end the climate crisis. And by the way, on day one, we will declare a climate emergency that unleashes over $500 billion every year to be used to create good jobs, union jobs in clean, renewable energy, in public transportation, which is renewably powered, in sustainable and regenerative agriculture, and affordable public housing, which is environmentally sound. We need that housing. That, along with federal rent control, by the way, and with forbidding the private equity in real estate from buying up our housing units and driving up the price, we can make housing affordable. And because the Green New Deal, and declaring the emergency provides that money on day one, we will start the construction of affordable public housing, so-called social housing, which is not built for the profit of the developers, but is built in the public domain for we the people to have affordable housing that we need. And we will also bring public transportation and the rail system, which we badly need to upgrade and coordinate, because right now it's a completely discoordinated, privately owned system. That and our energy system, they need to be brought into public ownership, public management, to be transparent and run on behalf of the American people. So the powers that be are terrified. Empire is doubling down. Its days are numbered for all kinds of reasons. And I'll say along those same lines, the apartheid state of Israel will not survive. It will collapse under its own weight. It is already in very dire straits. A recent poll showed that 1 out of every 3 residents of Israel is now in the process of leaving Israel. They cannot sustain this war. Their economy is in a shambles. Their tourist industry has completely collapsed. And they have already made clear they are not going to be a part of a ceasefire. They are no longer negotiating for a ceasefire. They are no longer interested in a ceasefire. They have stated publicly now that they are beginning to annex Gaza, which is what many have thought all along. But this is that plan of ethnic cleansing that has been written into the blueprint, essentially, for the state of Israel from even before it declared its independence. So this plan, which has led inevitably towards genocide, is coming to its logical conclusion. And a big shout out to the nation of Spain and the nation of France, which have gone on record now to say that they will not be shipping weapons or military support, and have called for basically an international economic and military embargo for Israel. So while we won't hear it from the powers that be, the conclusion to this story is in process right now. And the more we stand up, the quicker it will happen. The more votes are cast for our campaign against genocide. Every vote is a shot across the bow of the empire to say, we are here, we are not going away, and we are going to bring this genocide to an end as soon as possible. And just a quick word about how terrified they are, because, you know, it's an incredible tribute to everybody working on this campaign that the Democrats have felt obliged now to put out their first commercial, their first ad ever against a third-party candidate. And I am so honored to be the target of that ad. And that ad, if you read the comments on social media, first of all, it's hardly gotten any, I mean, it's like embarrassingly small what it's doing on social media. It just does not have a footprint whatsoever. And the comments are almost universally condemning it and saying, oh, this now fully convinces me that I'm going to vote green and I'm going to go out and register green. That is what its effect has been. Same thing for the Breakfast Club. If you haven't seen it yet, definitely watch it. And above all, read the comments. There are, last I looked, there were well over 20,000 comments, which are all basically saying the same thing. And also, I wasn't going to vote before. Now I'm motivated to go out and register to vote, and I am voting green in this election. So. Today it was Hill Rising. I don't know how many people watch Hill Rising out there, but I watch it. It's a good source of news. But today, you know, they were going all in on me. Well, not all of them, not Robbie Suave, interestingly, but the other, it was the Democrats. They had two Democratic Party shills that were basically saying the talking points of that ridiculous ad. And if you look at the comments, people are just irate. They're just outraged. They are so sick of being smeared and kind of led around by the nose. And what is so shocking to me is that this really isn't new. This is kind of what they've been doing. This is my third run, and they've done this all along. But it's like we're at a different moment in history right now, and people are breaking up with this abusive relationship, this abusive political relationship. People are breaking up, and they get people know that they are being thrown under the bus on jobs, on healthcare, on education, on housing. They are sick of being thrown under the bus, and they are really sick of being manipulated and, you know, to have this manufactured consent going on. You know, to read the media, it sounds like everybody is a happy camper and gladly voting for Kamala Harris, except for the so-called crazies. But, who's voting for Trump? It's not because people love Trump. There are some racists out there, yes, absolutely, who are voting for Trump. But a lot of Trump supporters are simply voting for him because they're so pissed off at the Democrats for betraying their promises over and over again. But it is not a world of happy campers out there. People are really pissed off, and they are this close to not voting at all or actually voting for us if they can hear about us. And that's why what Workers Strike Back and our campaign are doing and what we're doing together is so incredibly powerful. And let me say that this this working alliance here really terrifies them, that workers and Kshama's organization and Muslim Americans and the Green Party and students and African Americans, we are standing up and declaring our political, not only declaring our political independence, but that we are actually taking a stand for what it is that we want and we need. And right now, that is the Stein-Ware campaign in this election. They are absolutely terrified. The Democrats especially are completely freaking out, which is why they keep running this absolutely ridiculous, pathetic attack ad in one form or another. You know, it was AOC, it was Keith Ellison, you know, it's Mehdi Hassan. It's the same story every time. It's these tired, worn out, dead smears that they've been using actually for a decade or two against me. And they don't get traction and people are really pissed off. It is a testimony to how scared they are. And let me just add that the fact that we could be heading into World War III right now, the fact that there is a real risk of a massive expanding regional war, it doesn't even have to become World War III, but a serious war with Iran now will be devastating to the region, to U.S. armed forces that are in the region. They are in the target here. Remember, we now have a draft. We have a draft which is operational. And it is collecting names. It knows where you are. You are being automatically registered if you are between the ages of 18 and 25. And that draft, all it takes is for the president to say, okay, we're at war, we have an emergency, you're going over to defend Israel. That could actually be happening. There is a real risk of that. So I'm not convinced that we can't win this election. It really depends on what history does in the next couple of weeks. And I would not rule out a major calamitous event, whether it's a third hurricane that happens to hit a population center with no warning, in fact, because that's another danger. It's not only that the hurricanes are more powerful, it's that they ramp up really fast now. The most powerful ever was 1 year ago that hit Mexico. We haven't heard about it here. But that hurricane was totally unpredicted. And in the course of 24 hours, it went from a storm that wasn't really raising alarms whatsoever to a Category 5 hurricane in 24 hours. So there was no time to evacuate or to put out warnings. That's the new world that we're in right now, this brave new world brought to us by the parties of war and Wall Street and fossil fuel extraction. That's where we are. And we could be there again. We are on the verge of catastrophe on so many dimensions right now, climate and especially endless war and potential nuclear engagement. We are so close to the edge right now that we could tip into truly catastrophic circumstances between now and the election. And when that happens, things can flip in a completely unexpected way. That's not to say that we should hold our breath that we're going to win the election. I just wouldn't rule it out. And the harder we work, the higher we will achieve. And, you know, one of the rules of Malcolm X is that you never let your enemy tell you how many of you there are. Likewise, we do not allow the predatory political parties to tell us what is a victory. A victory is for us to do the most that we can with the cards that we are dealt. So we're dealt some pretty amazing cards right now. And to look at what's happening on social media and on YouTube, there is a huge wake up that's going on right now. So I really urge people to sign up, to own this campaign, to own our future, to reject the propaganda of powerlessness, to embrace our power, and to know in 2020, 1 out of every 3 eligible voters did not vote because they rejected the 2 zombie candidates being rammed down their throats. So if word gets out, there could be a whole lot of people who are coming out to vote in this race. And what we can do is exactly what Kshama and Workers Strike Back are doing, what our campaign is doing. We have training sessions, especially for those who are online, who are not at centers of Workers Strike Back all over the country. We are doing online trainings and phone banking. We have data sets wherever you are for numbers you can call and scripts. I urge you, phone banking, flyering, we can get flyers to you for you to go out and table. This is such a pivotal moment. We're at the breaking point right now as working people, as families, as farmers, you name it, as African Americans, as immigrants. We are very much at the breaking, as students, we are at the breaking point, and we can turn that breaking point into a tipping point, and history can do all sorts of wild things right now in this era that we're in. So we want to get out there, and if everyone is a foot soldier for this campaign, there's no end to what we can do. My hope is that we get to 5%, but that is a minimum. If we get to 5%, it's a whole new ballgame going forward. That won't be easy to do, and Kshama's exactly right. We have to fight for every vote that we're going to get. I wouldn't expect that we're going to win, but I wouldn't expect that we're not going to win either. It's a win as we define it. It's a win for fighting as hard as we can and for making use of this perfect storm. We are in a perfect storm for political realignment. It's been begging to happen for a long time. It kind of gets closer and further away. We have never been as close as we are right now. That is a tribute to every one of you, every one of us that are standing up and fighting for an America and a world that works for all of us. As Martin Luther King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. As Gaza goes, we all go. We must stand up for a world that we deserve, and together we are absolutely unstoppable. So thank you all so very much for making this happen.
Before we go, one sec, I just have a couple next steps for our movement. I don't know where to stay because I would love for us to take a big group photo. Before we get there though, just a couple steps before we close out for the evening. Just want to thank everyone for being here in person and online via our live stream. It's absolutely important that we declare that we will not vote for genocide. And it's so critical that we get out there and reach everyone possible, which is why we're going to be passing out as people leave these get out the vote forms and these pledge voter IDs so that we can build the strongest get out the vote campaign possible. One last announcement that I have is that during our fundraising pledge, we raised $5,825. Which is absolutely incredible for building the strongest movement and get out the vote campaign for Jill Stein. I would love, that is less than the amount that we have spent currently on the get out the vote campaign in Michigan. And I would love potentially if we could round that up to a 6,000. If anyone hasn't filled in their donation form, you can put it at the back there and talk to us. But would anyone be able to pledge an additional amount, $175 total, a $100, a $50, or $25 donation to get us to $6,000 today. I see one hand. Can anyone match that? We got a second hand. Beautiful. Thank you so much, everyone. No Harris, no Trump, no votes for genocide. No Harris, no Trump, no votes for genocide. Thank you so much, everyone. We're going to do a group photo, so if everyone can come up to the front here, that's what we'll close out with. Thank you.